So when you are completely dependent upon your wood stove as your heat source, your work starts a lot sooner, and actually in some instances you're planning a full year or more in advance. So where we live, we do have electricity, and we do have an electric forced air system in our home, but we haven't used that system in the 14 plus years that we've had our house. So we rely solely on wood heat, and we don't ever purchase any of our wood. It comes completely from our land. So we have to be really strategic and make sure that we're getting the wood down in time. So this section up here, actually, and you can see we just started falling these logs, and it's in October. We're almost to November, and we're bringing them down, and this will be wood that will be heating our home in the coming years, but it won't be this year. And what a lot of people fail to understand when you've got wooded area, that your woods are meant to be a crop. They are definitely a lot more of a long-term crop than the vegetable garden and the fruit trees, but it's still something that you need to be managing if you have got trees on your property. So this stand that we had right up here, which is in the middle of our cow pasture, had some alder and a lot of maple in it predominantly. And we took the alders down. They weren't really large yet. And then a lot of these maples were older trees, but unfortunately a lot of them were beginning to get rot in the center of the heartwood, and that's just going to kill the tree. They were also near neighboring fence lines and where the cattle were, and as you start to come into those winter months when you get a lot of wind and rain and snow, that's when a lot of them tend to come down. And if they blow down on our neighbor's fence line or our fence line and the cows get out, then that's on us. So we wanted to go through, and we decided to take all of them out because there were so many of them that were diseased or were leaning. And so we've taken those out, and you can see here we've got these piled, but of course to burn efficiently, they need to go through a curing period. So you never want to buy green wood if you plan on keeping your house warm and using it, and you want to have it down so it's got plenty of time to dry. So that's what we're doing here. And then part of this pasture area now that's been cleared, we will reseed, but some of it will also plant back because we're always thinking about the future and what we'll want on this piece of land. And so we will be putting some trees back up. We like to do some of the silvopasture type method where you've got trees with your grass. It provides shade for the cattle, it provides shade for the grass. And it's a really good management system. But the great thing is we have this wood down, so this is going to provide heat for our family, but we've got excess wood, more than we would be able to burn. We usually go through about 5 or 6 cord in an entire year here for us to keep the house. And so we'll have too much of the wood, and even though we'll get it cured and dried and stacked, it's only going to last so long. It breaks down. So we'll be able to sell some of the excess, and that is actually going to be something my son is doing. So we're teaching him some business and entrepreneurial skills as well as some good hard work. And so he will be able to sell some of this firewood himself to earn money. He's almost old enough to drive. So this will be a way for him to earn money for insurance and gas money and all those fun things, because mama and daddy, we are not paying for that. If he's going to be old enough to drive, then he has to figure out ways to support himself. This pile here, obviously, we just took down, and this will begin drying out. It's not going to get very dry throughout the winter, but it's going to be fine. It'll sit here over winter, and then in the spring, we'll really start working this some more. But we've got lots of other wood. As I said, this is like a year process, and you're always thinking really far out. And so last year, you can see just the remnants of what we did of our wood over here. So we definitely are doing it in stages. So here is where we have gotten some of the trees that we fell down, and this is the round pile. So we do have a wood splitter, which if you're doing large amounts of wood, I highly recommend getting a wood splitter. Yes, you can do it with an axe the old-fashioned way, but when you're trying to be efficient and go through a lot, having that wood splitter is very, very helpful. So we get them bucked down, mostly limbed off. You can see, of course, there's a little bit of a limb here, but we kind of get them bucked down into about this size of rounds, and then we split them. So this is still pretty green and pretty wet. So we've got this sitting here. And then after we get them split, we actually like to put them alongside the fence here. We also try not to fall over our rounds of wood, so be careful, is we stack them here, and we just have sheets of tin, and we've got some boards so they're up off of the ground, and then we cover them with the sheets of tin because pretty much year round here living in the Pacific Northwest, the only months we don't really get rain is about mid-August through the first part of September. We get about 4 to 6 weeks if we're lucky without a lot of rain. We're pretty much getting rain, and so we cover it from the top. But the reason that we like to pick this section right here, and we end up drying and curing the majority wood over the summer months, is because we get a lot of wind that comes through here. And so you get that wind, and of course the sun when it's out, but we get that wind and we get a lot of air movement, and so that's going to dry and cure it a lot faster, and it's in full sunlight when the sun is out rather than a shady area or an area that doesn't have a lot of airflow. So we had this whole fence line. You can see all the way from the end there, which we don't actually have a piece of tin on at the moment, but we had this entire fence line was all lined with wood and was curing over this summer, and we've gotten all of it in the woodshed except for this very last section right here. And so you can see, you definitely want to make sure you have it weighed down because we will get some really big gusts of wind that come through, so we just kind of use whatever we've got on hand to keep this weighed down. But you can look at this, like we've been having rain now for weeks, and this is really cured, it's nice and dry, and you can still see that this part is all really dry. A few of these just along the bottom, they're a little bit wet just because it actually just quit raining. It was fingers crossed that it would stop raining in order to come out here and film. And so this will get transferred to the woodshed because it's just finished drying. So we like to do them in just kind of those single rows like that as we're getting them cured. So this is our woodshed where everything comes in, and we've got several layers back of this. And then right up front here, we also have a bin. Now this wood does not come from us. My husband works at a guitar mill. Actually, it's a tone wood, it's a sawmill. And so this is some of their reject, but it's really nice and dry. So this is what we use for our kindling to get the fires started in the morning. So we just keep this bin right here of that wood, and then we transition obviously over to the firewood. So this is relatively close to the house, keeps it nice and dry, and we will fill this up. And we actually just moved this that you see here, which I don't really recommend having to stack and then move and restack your wood twice, but this was at the very back, and it had been in here for about, oh my goodness, I think 3 or 4 years, and we never actually got to the very back row, and then we just kept refilling it then each summer so that we would have all of our wood in by the time fall and winter hit. And so we finally decided that we needed to bring this wood forward and burn it before it started to break down too much. And you can see some of the pieces are a little bit more soft and broken down than others, but it's super dry, so we're going to go through and burn this first, and then we'll hit the wood that we actually cured and dried this summer that's behind it. And I have to say, one of the great things about doing firewood is you always get a little bit of an arm workout, so you can have those nice toned arms packing all the firewood into the house. So when you're first building your fire, you always want to make sure that all of your drafts are open. And we live in a manufactured home, so we actually have 2 drafts because we have to take an air source from underneath the house because the manufactured homes are so airtight. But it actually works really well and helps me to be able to control the temperature of the fire by having those 2 drafts, better than stoves we've had in the past in other houses that just had the top draft. So you want to make sure both those are open. And then every fall before we start burning fires again, we make sure that you clean the chimney. Nobody wants to deal with a chimney fire. And then we shovel out the ashes. We've been building fires for about a week and a half now, so there's a little bit of ash in the stove, but not bad. And then all of those bills and different type of mail we never like to get, that's what I use to start fires. Brown paper grocery bags work really well too, but most of mine, because I use reusable bags a lot of the time, are in use. with the seed harvest that I've got in here drying out from the bean seed. So your smallest and driest pieces of wood, which this is some kindling again from my husband's mill, so we're really fortunate in that way. I don't actually have to take a little maul and try and get shavings off. And I always like to put mine in like a crisscross pattern so that you've got plenty of airflow in there to help it take off. I like to use some of this really dry, like a lot of this is maple. It burns nice and hot. And then we'll put on some of the other chunks later and other things of wood that maybe don't burn quite as hot, a little bit more softwoods. And when you're first starting the fire, especially with these two, I found that if you don't close the door quite all the way, of course, stay here the whole time, but you can see like it immediately really starts to push the air and the oxygen through there and up through the chimney, and it'll get going super fast. So after it's going pretty well, then I start to put the wood in, and I don't do that teepee fashion any longer, but I'll just go like that. Now, typically the type of wood that we burn is obviously what's gonna grow in your area. So for us, we've got maple. We don't really have much oak here. Get that a little bit better. But we have quite a bit of fir, we've got cedar, and like I said, and we've got maple. So that's predominantly, we do that. There's, we don't really have some spruce. We pretty much typically are doing, the majority of us, a cedar, fir. We have some hemlocks that we fall. Hemlock's not ideal, but it's a decent enough wood, and that's what we usually typically burn. And you can really start to control the heat of your fire. So obviously this is what controls the heat in our house, but also when the power goes out, and even sometimes when the power doesn't go out, I will do quite a bit of cooking on the wood stove. So we made sure when we bought this wood stove and we put it in, which it's Lopi is the brand name of it, we wanted to make sure that it had some flat surfaces on the top that were large enough for the cast iron skillets and the Dutch ovens and to do cooking on. And so what's great is this one is a 2-tier. So this section right here, of course, is going to get the hottest because it's closest to the flame. And then this one up here is nice because it doesn't get quite as hot. And so I have a little bit of like temperature control between like really hot when the fire is fully going, and then if I need things to not cook quite as hot, I can put them back here. The other thing that we really like is I've got, as I said, both of these where I can adjust the draft. And so what we usually do when we're first getting it going is we kind of have both of them open just to get everything going and the air flowing. But once it's starting to take off like it is now, then we go ahead and anytime you open the door, you want to make sure this upper one is open, because if you don't and you open the door, then all the smoke's going to come into your house, which nobody wants. So after the fire's going and the door's closed, then we shut this top one down so that the heat is not going up the chimney, but the heat is staying in here, and then we just leave this bottom one open. When I'm first starting it, I leave this bottom one all the way open because that's gonna let the most amount of oxygen in and really keep things going until I've got a good coal base and it's really established and the stove has heated up. And then after that, to control, you can control it by how much wood you put in. So obviously if I put in, 3 or 4 big pieces of wood, that's gonna be a lot of fuel and it's gonna burn really hot. Whereas if I just put a couple in like that, it's not super cold in the house this morning. We still have quite a bit of heat left over from yesterday's fire at this time of year. I don't need it to get super hot. So you can control your heat by how much wood and then also by your dampers and your drafts here. And so if I don't want it to burn as hot, I just shut that all the way in, which right now I probably would just take it out because it's just getting started. So I leave it fully open when it's first burning for about usually the first 30 to 40 minutes of the fire being started. And then I'll push it in if it's burning too hot, or if I'm not cooking anything, I don't need to be that hot. Then you can just push it in like halfway and you can just kind of play with it. But with your wood stove, controlling the temperature both for cooking and for heating the house, really that's how you can control it, is by how much oxygen and how hot you're allowing it to burn. So we'll let this get heated up, and then once it's warm enough, this little fan will start to go, and that helps to circulate the air all the way throughout the house, or I should say the warmth, which is the warm air, all the way throughout the house. Even though it is hard work being a homesteader and being very self-sufficient and providing for yourself, there's something really beautiful about living in the seasons and having the fire going. Now it's getting warm enough, you can see it's pushing that air, and getting to change not only the coziness of the fire, but also with our eating, and having all of the fall crops coming in is really beautiful. I feel like it really allows you to experience each of the seasons. And even though we're planning ahead, as you saw in this video, sometimes years ahead, it also helps you to really live in the moment.